Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation in Studio B, your day-to-day Cougar Sports play-by-play. Jarom Jordan alongside Dave McCann. We love us some good Cougar Tails, but our next guest loves them more than most. The Royal Blueberry coming out Saturday, which he debuted with the mascot on this set a couple weeks ago. He joins us live from Bristol, Connecticut. Sean Farnham of ESPN is on the program, and he's got the shirt of shirts worn today. What's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
I mean, I'm really only here for the Cougar Tails, but look, this is the best time of year, and a couple things that just before we get started, I was so excited to see all this the coaches show this past week because I do watch, by the way, and Tyson getting all the love that he deserves for his role in this program. Like from a national media perspective, there's very few people that are in that position that do it as well as Tyson does. Communication, willingness to find and help and research to certain things that will enhance a broadcast. And then just his understanding of the college system. And obviously with Coach Young being his first year, there is a very different transition that they've gone through. But Tyson, man, kudos to all media relations directors across the country, but Tyson's one of the best in the country. And I love seeing him get his time next to Coach Young talking about his role.
It feels like, listening to that answer, that Tyson's the one that got you that shirt.
No.
Right? Where did you get that shirt?
The guy that's doing chest presses today instead of being on air is the guy that got me this shirt.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a chest day. It's always a chest day. Most people have leg days. Spencer has chest days on a consistent basis. But he gave me the shirt 2 times ago when I was in town, and I was like, you know what? I wore it once on here. I need to wear it again. So I packed it, and I was like, I'm going to throw this on and be a little bit more casual for today.
Fantastic.
Spencer and I have been doing the show 12 years. He doesn't give me those shirts. I'll take it up later, I guess, with him. BYU Iowa State tonight, but first I want to ask you about BYU West Virginia. This was a first half that was, Kirk Ferentz was pleased with how that first half went for BYU West Virginia. No points. Second half, BYU blows out West Virginia. They did it with a different type of win. What kind of value does that have for BYU into the Big 12 tournament and the NCAA tournament?
I think it's immense because they've been shooting the ball so well, and the three-point shot has become so valuable. But as we've talked about over the year, and even going really into last season, sometimes you've got to find ways to win games that it's not the norm, and you've got to be able to play at different paces. You've got to execute differently. And I thought that they did a very good job of that. You're not at your normal 10 made threes per game, and all of a sudden you cut that number in half. Well, then you've got to figure it out. Can you get to the free throw line? And they were okay at the free throw line. I thought they could have shot better there. Obviously, 14 of 22. But they did a lot of other things well enough to win the game. In particular, at the defensive end of the floor. Like I think that gets lost with the numbers they put up offensively in the second half was that the defense was that strong and that they were able to get out of there with another win. At this point in time of the season, it's very simple. You win. That's it. That's all. That's the only thing that matters. And how you go about doing that, I think, obviously you want to keep it to who you are, to your strengths. You guys, I heard you guys talking about Houston. Like, watch Houston last night. Is Houston who Houston is? Yeah, every game. They don't, like Kelvin Sampson said during the broadcast it was talked about, that he didn't care that a player was like 0-7 from the field. That he wanted him to keep shooting, but what he cared about was his effort, his body language, and his ability to get offensive rebounds. Because when you shoot 25 more shots than your opponent, it doesn't matter what your shooting percentage is, you're probably winning the game. And that's a very unique mindset of how they do it. And I think obviously for BYU, we all know how they want to do it. They want to space the floor. They want to play with great pace. They want to flatten you because they run 2 guys to the corner deep every single time. So the three-point shot is huge. But when your shot's not falling, can you still find a way to win against a very good opponent? And they did that over the weekend.
That win over West Virginia certainly makes tonight bigger. For a team playing with a lot of momentum, and Iowa State's seemed like they've had momentum the whole season. So here they clash in Ames. What does BYU got to do to get one tonight?
They got to limit their turnovers. Iowa State, when healthy, and they are getting back to being healthy. Like they went through their rough patch. If you look at them at full strength, I think they only have 1 loss on the season.
Yes.
And that, to me, is why I still believe Iowa State is good enough to win a national championship. Now, with that being said, they're not playing at the elite level because when you miss time out on the court, you also miss practice time, and that practice time disrupts rhythm. Rhythm disrupts cohesiveness and chemistry and understanding where guys are going to be. But this is a team that does an excellent job of pinning you on the sideline. Once they get you there, they create turnovers and they create offensive runouts ahead of your defense. If BYU can limit the number of turnovers that they have tonight, and we've seen this, guys, at times over the course of the season where turnovers have been an issue. And if you turn the ball over tonight, you're taking a loss on the road. If you can limit your turnovers, at least just keep it equal as far as points off of turnovers go between you and Iowa State, I believe that BYU will be in a good position because I think BYU is a better shooting team. But there's some parts to that of like, all right, it's easier said than done. Like when you feel it and you experience it, it's very different than watching it on film. And I think that's going to be the challenge. And especially in that environment, it's one of the most electric environments in all of college basketball.
BYU sub 12 or fewer turnovers the last 8 games. They've won 6 of those. It's been incredible. Answer our question today. What do you think? Is it better for BYU to win tonight or if they match up again in the quarterfinals next Thursday in Kansas City? Which would have more value?
By the way, both is such a cop-out that you guys even put that on there because clearly the answer is both, right? Like if you win both, that's the best.
Blue goggles on.
Yeah, but here's the reality of it. The NCAA selection committee has proven over time that it takes into value less of the conference tournament than it does the regular season. And so therefore a win in Ames, a true road game, would be far more significant for the seeding process should they match up again, because they probably would, in the quarterfinals of the Big 12 and losing that game on a neutral site. It would definitely benefit them more to get the win as far as their NCAA tournament aspirations go than advancing far in the conference tournament and playing those extra games that seemingly the NCAA tournament committee, by the time we get to Kansas City next week, will likely have the framework already put into place for a majority of the seeds. Now, they'll change as bid stealers come along in some of the smaller conferences and stuff like that. But the initial seeding process most likely will have already taken place.
So Lenardi has the Cougars as an 8 as of the moment. Where do you think
I think he's missing it. I think he's missing it.
Can they get off that line?
Amen.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think at the very least they're a 7 right now. I think a win tonight puts them at a 6.
Really?
I think as you look around college basketball and you would look at the quality of wins and how they've played down the stretch and the significance of where they would finish in this conference, I think will be valued more by the selection committee than the metrics are showing right now. I don't think Joe's bad at his job. I talk to Joe all the time. I actually text Joe and be like, where do you see this team? Where do you see that team? And we go back and forth in a lot of those discussions when I'm doing my games. But I do think that some of that there's a devalue necessarily that has taken place where the metrics aren't necessarily lining up to how a team is playing. So I think when you look at like the net ranking right now, I think BYU's behind UCLA. Well, I think if you watch them play right now, who do you think is playing better basketball, BYU or UCLA? So the eye test does become part of this as well. And the answer to that question, by the way, would be BYU. BYU's playing better basketball than UCLA. UCLA's been great and has done a lot of good things. But when you watch the wins at Arizona, you'd have an at Arizona and an at Iowa State win on your resume. Like it's hard to find better road wins in the last half of your season than those 2 wins would be. And so I think that would be a huge value to them. And that's why I think they would get pushed up eventually to the 6, let things kind of settle out over the SEC and the Big Ten and all those things kind of file into rank over the next week or so. And I think you'd find yourself as a 6. I think likely they're going to be a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. If they're at 8-9, I think that's a little bit of an injustice based on how they've performed in particular in conference play.
Thank you, because it feels like this team is better than last year's team. And again, the level of the ocean tide, if you will, is different year to year depending on how everyone plays or whatnot. But this team deserves to not be an 8 or 9, as you mentioned. In what ways is BYU more prepared for the NCAA tournament this year than last year, by the way?
Well, let me just piggyback off of that, because I think one of the interesting things that I'm looking to see from this tournament committee is this is the first year we've really had these super conferences, right? Where it's been expanded out. So how do they value conference play? Do they put more on it, less on it? Do we look at Georgia was really good in the non-conference and they've got 6 wins now in conference play, but 4 of those are quad 1. So therefore they're in the NCAA tournament. Where do you seed them? Versus the ACC, where there's teams that have stacked up wins like Louisville, and I'm not discrediting Louisville and Pat Kelsey and what they've done. It's been unbelievable. But in large part, the ACC hasn't been very good. But yet you go back to the non-con, and Louisville obviously had a very good non-conference as well. So then how do you balance the fact that over the last couple of months, very limited opportunities for quad ones, and how did they perform in those games versus like a team like in the SEC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12, where it seems like every single time you go on the road, it's a quad one opportunity, and how you perform in those games and the significance of some of those wins. I think it's going to be very interesting how the tournament committee views this year, because I would also say, like, look at like from your old conference, the WCC, St. Mary's is 27-4. Like, and Joe Lunardi currently has them as like a 7, and I think they're more of a 5. So there's just some differences based on my view, and again, I value things differently than probably even the committee does. I really do look at how a team is playing and the significance of sweeping Gonzaga. Like, even though the Zags aren't necessarily the same that they've been in recent years, I do think there's significance in how they play, who they beat, how they win. 15-1 league, that matters. And so, like, St. Mary's, to my opinion, should be a 5. I think BYU should be a 6 or 7, likely a 7 right now, but could play their way into a 6. And again, I think I'm just like, maybe I'm valuing things a little bit differently. But I do look at it from a perspective of, on a neutral floor, if this team faced this team, who wins? I think that's the way that a lot of times, if I was in the committee room, that there would be a lot of discussion if we're splitting hairs on where a seed should go. I think that question would have to that question would have to come up. And also, with all due respect to the teams that are a 1 seed, like if you're a 1 seed, and I heard you guys talking about, well, you know, Auburn and Duke and stuff. Well, trust me, they don't want to see BYU in the second round.
That'd be a scary second round, yeah.
Like I get it that you don't want to play Houston or you know, Auburn or Duke because they're a 1 seed, and obviously consistently over the course of the season they've been the best teams in college basketball. But at the same time, they're looking at their 8-9 going, wait, I got UConn? I don't want to see Dan Hurley's team in an 8-9. Like, I got BYU. I don't want to see Kevin Young's team as an 8-9. Those guys could beat anybody in the country. And the reality is they can, and they've proven that already. So I think it's very interesting, and it'll be really interesting to see what the tournament selection committee does, because there are very few teams across the country that you look at and say they could beat any team in the country on a given night. Like BYU's one of those teams.
Let's finish with this one, Sean. Back to tonight. True or false? BYU wins tonight. Kevin Young wins Big 12 Coach of the Year.
False.
How come?
He's very deserving of it. I'm not saying he's not deserving of it. Kelvin Sampson is 16-1 or 17-1 in league play. Like, they've lost 1 game, guys. 1. And I get what expectations were before the start of the season. But, you know, you go back to how the season started. They were 4-3. Milos Uzan was struggling. The team was blowing leads late in games. They had a 10-point lead on Auburn. They blew it. They had a 10-point lead against Alabama. They blew it. And everyone's like, well, this doesn't look like the same Houston team. And he got them right. And he got them right to the part where they're walking away with a conference championship. And to me, there's value in winning the actual conference. And when you exceed expectations, the expectations might have been to win the conference again, but to exceed it in the manner in which they have, I think is very, very impressive when you look at Houston for me. That doesn't diminish what Kevin Young has done. I think it's been an outstanding year for him and his transition and how he has his team playing. The blueprint and the foundation for what is going to happen at BYU is ever present and clear. This is not a program that has been a one-hit wonder even a year ago under Mark Pope. Now you come back this year, and the way they've performed and how they've exceeded expectations, likely a top 5 finish, maybe even 4, could be even better than that, depending upon what's going on. But likely 4 or 5 seed going into the tournament is a tremendous accomplishment for Kevin Young, and should not my stance on that should not diminish how people view Kevin. It certainly doesn't change my view of the excellence in which he's orchestrated this season on the sideline. His 11-man rotation, most coaches would have gotten away from that a long time ago. I think that's been a really key component to this team, is that they are fresher, they are hungry, and they compete every single possession throughout the course of the game. And I think that's why they were able to win the game at Arizona a couple weeks ago that we talked about. But everybody knows they're going to get a crack at it. And if you're playing well, you get longer minutes. And if you're not, that's okay. You're going to come out of the game, but you're going to get another crack at it in the second half as well. And I think everybody knowing that allows them to give their best effort on a consistent basis. And a lot of that is coaching. That's relationships, that's trust, and that's communication that Kevin Young has had with his group.
A Cougar coach is winning the Big 12 Coach of the Year. That's what we just determined.
Yeah,
Best of luck tonight in the studio. We'll see you at halftime.
I'll be on halftime.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be
We'll
on
see you at
halftime tonight. It'll be good. Again, those turnover numbers, that's the number to watch tonight for me.
Okay.
If you keep the turnover numbers down, you got a chance.
Okay, have fun if you haven't already gone to Orange Theory there in Bristol.
I've already gone, but I'm just here for the Cougar Tails, guys.
there you are.
Thanks, Sean. We appreciate it. Sean Farnham of ESPN. You can catch us tonight at halftime.